When we get into the middle of winter, and we are officially in the middle of winter, if you haven't been able to tell, I usually like to take a few weeks and do a topical series for a couple different reasons. First, we don't know from one week to the next what the weather will be like, so I don't want to do a theological series that kind of builds on the week before, but do something more practical, something where if there's a week where the weather turns bad, it's not like we've missing a segment in there. And so this series is very practical. This series may in some ways change your life. This series also may make someone mad. Oh well. It's okay. It's not intended to, but it may challenge you. The premise of these next few weeks is life is hard. I think it is for everybody. I read someone said this week, and I never heard it exactly said like this. Life is full of holes. There are holes that we accidentally fall into. There are holes that other people push us into. But the most common hole that impacts most people are holes that we dig ourselves, and we're not even aware that we're digging until we look around to notice how high the sides are getting. And as I said last week, the question is not how can I get out of this hole, but maybe the first question is, how can I lose the shovel that I've been using to create the situation? None of us are perfect. All of us have areas that challenge us. All of us. And it's hard to change. And it's hard to take a look at ourselves. It's hard to admit that there are issues. But it's harder to ignore. And the damage in ignoring them is greater. And the cost is far more prohibitive. So life is hard either way. So since life is going to be hard either way, sometimes the decision we have is to choose our hard. I want to read Proverbs chapter 15, verse 16 to 24. This is out of Proverbs, and we're going to be different places of Scripture today, but this is just kind of a theme. This is one of the chapters in Proverbs you may have heard more than others. It says, better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble. I think I should say without it. Oh, with it. Okay, sorry. Better is a dinner of vegetables where love is than a fatted ox and hatred with it. There are those who are hot-tempered stir up strife, but those who are slow to anger calm contention. The way of the lazy is overgrown with thorns, but the path of the upright is a level highway. The wise child makes a glad father, but the foolish despise their mothers. Folly is a joy to one who has no sense, but a person of understanding walks straight ahead. Without counsel, plans go wrong, but with many advisors, they succeed. To make an apt answer is a joy to anyone, and a word in season, how good it is. For the wise, the path of life leads upward in order to avoid Sheol below. I just almost want to introduce the topic this morning. We're going to get more specific in future weeks, but this is just kind of to be sure we're choosing our hard in our personal lives. I think there's qualities that all of us should have, and one quality is the quality of character. Now, we use that word in two different ways. I mean it the second way, not the first way. Sometimes you look at people and go, man, they're a character. That's not how I mean that. The second way is, wow, does that person have a wonderful character? 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 21, Paul saying, for we are taking pains to do what is right, not only in the eyes of the Lord, but in the eyes of men. The thing about character is, character rarely comes easily. Character is formed uniquely in challenge and trial. This is where growth happens. And roots are deepened. An easy life, a simple life, a life where everything is successful all the time and easy and nothing comes difficult, That's not a life that breeds any depth, just surface. I heard someone talking not too long ago, and they made a statement that I'm still rolling around in my head. It says, sometimes a child who grows up with no challenge whatsoever gets to an adult and will experience the lack of the perfect as a tragedy. You got to think about that for a while. I think there's an element of truth there. Sometimes if you want to find someone with good advice, someone with wisdom, someone with character, look for the person with a few scars. Because you might find someone that's been through a few things. Someone who grew up in a home with no issues, went maybe a legacy scholarship to Princeton or Harvard or Yale, and then there's someone else that maybe had to start working at 15, and someone who funded some of their own thing and worked their way through just a regular college. In my world, between those two, I know who I'd rather hire and be a part of things. Character is not only formed in challenge and trial. Character is something that requires exertion and some strenuous effort. We have to work to overcome laziness. I'm going to be completely and totally honest. And I really tried to do this. I think I successfully graduated high school without ever once bringing home homework. I would do math homework in English, my English homework in science, my science homework in social studies, my social studies homework in study hall, and that's what I did. I really tried hard to be sure I didn't bring home any homework. I got to college, and I did as whatever was necessary to get the grade that I wanted without unduly impacting my pickup basketball schedule. It's amazing, fast forward a few years, when I'm doing another level of stuff, I'm doing master's level work, all of a sudden, I was outlining papers and I was planning ahead and doing research and slotting it and doing first drafts and all that stuff for the first time. We have to work hard sometimes to overcome bad habits. Sometimes we decide we'll change everything. My challenge is start with one thing, with one area. If you change 2% of life a year and the next year you do 2 more percent, it doesn't take too long down the road. You have massively changed a lot of things about what you're doing. Sometimes we have to work to overcome anger. And I'm not trying to stereotype too much, but I think there's relative truth in this in life. I'm looking at most of us men here. We have to work to overcome where our fuse goes off. We have to be more self-aware. Sometimes we have to work on overcoming negativity. And I'm not looking primarily at the men at this one. I won't say anything more than that. You know, sometimes a positive outlook makes the work go quicker. It's a force multiplier. It actually gets things done. We have to look always, all of us in some way, none of us are immune, we have to look for ways to battle ourselves. And we live in a time and a day and an age where the greater culture says, whatever's inside of you, whatever you naturally feel, you have to let it out. Your authentic self must get out. That's when you are most effective or true. I don't want most people's authentic self getting out. I want it hidden. See, character's created when we battle ourselves. And every one of us needs to battle some part of our nature. It could be anger, it could be negativity, it could be greed, it could be lust, it could be gossip, it could be pride, it could be self-righteousness, it could be a whole host of things. The truest test that all of us will ever take is the one that we take when no one is looking. And yet that's the one most people fail the most often. We don't think anybody will see. No one will miss this. I need it more than the company does. If I take this, if I do this, if I let this little rumor spread a little bit, or if I laugh at it, maybe they'll be devalued. I can get the next promotion. In any of the ways we tend to do it. Doing the right thing is hard. It's always hard. But let me tell you what else is hard. Dealing with the consequences of giving in is also hard. So as in every other area of life, my challenge is choose your hard. One is harder short term. It gets easier long term. The other one is always the easiest thing short term, but it gets harder the further out you go. Character is so important. It will definitely change your life. The next thing we always want to do is develop resilience. Proverbs chapter 4 says this, "Let your eyes look straight ahead and fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the path for your feet and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and keep your foot from evil." That's not the culture we live in. We want everything right now. The other day I pulled into the bank. Drive-through lane. There was no one in the drive-through lane. I had a very simple thing. I sat in the drive-through lane for 17 minutes. How do you know it was 17 minutes? I was keeping time. That was difficult. We want things now. We want the thing we want, however we want to get it. Look at all the businesses offering you easy credit. Get it now, pay later. And plus they'll tell you other things in their ads. Get the car you deserve. Get the vacation you deserve. Some of the people I know, if they got the definition, the vacation they deserve, they'd get a free week in Connersville, Indiana. But anyway, only a few people in here really understand the depth of that joke. We want the perfect job. I was talking to someone a couple weeks ago. Been out, having trouble finding a job. Well, there's lots of jobs. I'm waiting for the perfect one. Well, you'll be waiting till you're 65. There's no perfect job. Why don't you take a job right now while you look for the good job? And then when you get the good job, maybe you'll get the perfect job. If you wait for perfection, it's going to be a long, long wait. I remember the story. This happened in I can't remember if it was freshman or sophomore year of college. There was a young man, I can't remember his name. He went up to a girl he hadn't met before on campus. And he said, "I like you. I think you're perfect. I've been praying. I think it's God's will that you and I get married." And the girl looked at him, smiled, and said, "I think you need to pray more," and kept walking. We wait for the perfect person. We wait for the perfect situation. We wait for the perfect church. And when we get the perfect church, then I'll really dive in. Until that point, anything that's not perfect, I'll get upset, move to the next one. And then that one's not perfect, and that one's not perfect, and that one's not perfect. If it's not perfect, if it's the not perfect person, if it's not the perfect friend, if it's not the perfect job, if it's not the perfect boss, then I'll just check out. We also, sometimes we don't want to earn things. We don't want to work for it. Now, I'm not trying to let me just make a simple statement. Right now we have a push. We're seeing it again. People want free shelter. They want a free car. They want free college tuition. They want free this. They want free that. Here's the problem. There's never such a thing. Something costs what it costs. If I build a bridge or build a hospital or build a machine, the cost is the cost. The only question is how we distribute the pain. Only who bears the burden. We want other people to bear the burden. It's easy. We give up way too easily. I would tell you this, if you've just fallen, if you've just tripped, don't worry about the fall, just get up. Well, I fell again. Just get up again. If you fall 16 times, get up 17. If you fall 18 times, get up 19. Get up 19. There was a game we used to play in elementary school. Now, this will shock kids today. There were different rules when I went to elementary school. When we had a snowstorm, the teachers would come out and put orange cones up so we could have a supervised snowball fight. On the north side of school, where the sun wouldn't hit, you'd get that ice that would form through the winter. They would also have lines. We would actually bring dress shoes to school so we could wear them, and you could run across the playground, hit that ice and stop and slide across. And the teacher was there to be sure we all went one at a time, all this kind of thing. And when it was warm, we had this game. We had this big field behind elementary school. There was a black asphalt path that connected the back of the school to the neighborhood. We had a really inventive name for it. You ready? It was the back path. All right. Not a lot of smart kids went to my elementary school. And we played this game. We went out with those big, remember the big red playground balls? We used to play foursquare with them and funnel ball with them, and you'd do the gym class with the parachute and throw the balls in there. Anybody under a certain age has no idea what I'm talking about. And we would choose up teams, usually be about 20 or 30 on a team. And we'd start in the middle with the ball, and half the kids would try to get the ball to hit the fence over by the ditch. Means nothing to you. The other half would try to get the ball to cross the back path. And it didn't matter how you did it. You could kick it, you could throw it, you could tuck it under your arm and run with it. But if you got the ball to touch the fence, point for your side. Got the ball over the path, point for your side. And there were no rules. There were no penalties. You could clothesline them. You could tackle them. You could, whatever you needed to do. Well, you get about 10 minutes in the game, and all of a sudden, maybe one team would be up 3-0. And all of a sudden, you'd look up after it was 3-0 or 4-0, and what used to be 30 kids on either team now suddenly had shifted to 40 on one team and 20 on the other. All of a sudden, the team that had 3 or 4 all of a sudden had 40 kids and 45 kids. The bigger the score got, the more people all of a sudden would switch teams right in the middle of the game. I hated that. Then there was those who kept their head down and keep going. Sometimes when you'd watch, and I end up watching a lot of high school basketball or baseball, sometimes when a team gets down and you can see it, all of a sudden they'll be trailing by 10 points early, and you see them slump. You just see the slump. You almost see the energy go out. And then you see some kids, if they're up by 20 or down by 20, their demeanor is exactly the same. I love that. Sometimes in life you got to keep your head down and keep going. There's a certain toughness that goes to resilience. It's hard to keep going when everything is stacked against you. It's hard to keep going when the windstorm or the tornado knocked a tree down across your house. It's hard to keep going when the water is flowing into the basement. It's hard to keep going when you come home from a nice dinner out, and while you were out, the pipe burst. It's hard to keep going when everything's stacked against you, but it's also hard to live with the thought that I might have done it if I had just kept going. So if it's hard to keep going, or it's hard to live with the fact that I failed, but maybe I could have, choose your heart. Last thing I want to talk about is wisdom. Philippians 4:8. You know this verse. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on these things. That's a verse we all should know. Wisdom. It's something that we talk about a lot, but probably so few people ever have. We have conflated the idea of wisdom with knowledge. You can have, there's the joke, you all know the joke, the professor with 5 degrees that can't find his car in the parking lot. Wisdom is not knowledge. There are some people who are terribly intelligent who have very little wisdom. And we have some people who are very, very simple in the earth who have great wisdom. Wisdom is not knowledge. Except for maybe one area. The one place of knowledge that wisdom is kind of synonymous with. Wisdom is knowledge of yourself. Wisdom is rarely, if ever, found in the majority. In fact, the majority typically represent the opposite of wisdom. And it sprinkles through a lot of different areas of life. We'll talk about some of these in future weeks. Money. Wisdom knows that you have to think of money differently. If you're wise, you might have to save when everyone else spends. You might have to buy when everybody else sells. You might have to sell when everybody else buys. You might have to spend some years doing things difficult. I remember our grad school years when I was doing grad school. We did the whole thing. We had the envelope for a rent. We had the envelope for utilities. We had the envelope for groceries. And when that envelope was done, a lot of peanut butter and jelly and macaroni and cheese and hot dogs and tuna casserole were eaten. I remember growing up. Some of you know, and I mean this literally. Some of you know the pain of tough skin jeans. Because they were not made with any natural fibers that exist on earth. And then you get a hole in them, which were very easy, and then they came with that iron-on patch. And the reason why they were iron-on is because if you applied heat, those jeans would melt because they're not cotton or wool. And then the little edges of that patch would fray up. That's what I mean, the pain of tough skin jeans would like cut into your skin. Sometimes we have to realize that money does not deliver what most people think it does. Wisdom values family and relationships and marriage. We value marriage because it is good and it is sacred and it produces holiness in me. We live in a day and age that says marriage is good as long as it's meeting your needs, and as long as she's meeting your needs or he's meeting your needs or everything's good. And as soon as, that time doesn't happen, then that person can be jettisoned. Amicably, we part friends, and all sometimes the nonsense you see coming out of Hollywood when one is announced. We value it because it's good. We keep going not because it's always easy, but because it's good. I want to stop here. Sometimes you hear a lot of this. Oh yes, I'm all for marriage. Marriage is work. It's hard work. It's really, really hard work. It's terribly hard work. I'm not sure that we're helping ourselves there. Sometimes marriage is good because it's less work. I just know that there's this magic box in my house. It's a magic box. I put my clothes in that box, and a day or two later they appear clean on my bed. That's fantastic. thing. And that's what you're saying. Well, Pastor, you should be doing the laundry. Trust me, she doesn't want me anywhere near the laundry. At all. She doesn't probably want to wear anything that I've laundered. There are ways that it makes life easier and better. We value our spouse, not because they always deserve it, but because there was a day we said, I will love you and honor you and cherish you for as long as we both shall live. There are parts of life I want my wife to take me for granted. But then, out of gratitude and thanksgiving, we continue to bring our best, and we give of our best. Health. What are we doing in wisdom to be a good steward of our body? What are you purposefully avoiding? What are you being careful with? Where are you walking? Well, see, it's too cold right now. Well, some days are cold. My wife and I, we bundle up and walk, and we got scarves and hats and everything else and all that kind of thing. And then our big thing is, we even do it in July. We'd rather walk now than July when it's 92 and dripping humid. You know, I know it's hard to bundle up and walk. I know it's hard to sweat through clothes in July. I know it's also hard to deal with health issues. So choose your hard. Wisdom seeks advice. Wisdom is always grounded deeply in personal experience and relationship with God. Always. That's why the Gospels, I think, call it the narrow road. So my question is, what are you reading? When's the last time you opened the Bible? When's the last time you've just been quiet? When's the last time you said, God, I'm listening? When's the last time you said, Lord, not my will, but your will? See, it's hard to be purposeful and intentional. It's hard to be disciplined. It's always hard to deny yourself and follow. It is hard to live this way, especially initially. But it's also hard not to. Except there's one difference. One way is really, really difficult up front. But it gets easier later. We have boxes in our basement. If a fire starts in our basement, our house is gone. We have shelves of boxes. We've had some of these boxes since 1987. If you look at the boxes, if you put them all together, the box will say bedroom, guest bedroom, kitchen, living room, dining room. These are boxes we had when we moved back in 1987. But it's hard to find a good box. That box fits the dishes. That box fits the stuff in the bedroom. So you just break it down. It's all on a shelf. Last time we used them was 5 years ago. Some of those same boxes. I'm sure sometime in the future we'll use them again. I know exactly what fits our bedroom. It's that box. I'm sure somewhere along the way it was hard to label all that stuff. Maybe it might also be hard to have them stacked in the basement so high. I don't know. Someday one way is hard up front in the short term, but it gets easier. The other way, the way that most people choose, is really, really easy up front. You don't have to give a thought. You just bounce from decision to decision to decision. You just do what seems right one day to the next. You never give any thought. And it takes a terrible, terrible toll in the long run. So choose your hard. So choose your hard. And one of the ways that we choose hard is that we serve one who years ago had a very difficult decision. One way was what other people expect him to do, and the other way was a cross. And he chose